Welcome to Tales from the Bridge. My name is Tristan,
I'm James.
My name is Sam.
And I'm Kevin.
and we're ready to talk about some books today. We got some science fiction, science fact, all kinds of stuff, don't we?
Yep, we're going to talk about some of the books we've been reading.
Some of the plays we've been seeing.
Plays we've been seeing.
Plays.
Yeah, I'm expanding my horizons. Well, kind of. We'll get to that. Stay tuned.
And I'm looking forward to talking about our book of the month, too, the Three Body Problem.
And James's pick of the month for the next book.
No pressure, James.
And as usual, if you haven't subscribed or left a review, please do so. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us out. Love to hear from you.
You can also send us an email at info@talesfromthebridge.com.
If you are on Facebook, though, join the group Tales from the Bridge. Then you can post articles or stories or just memes and pictures, and it's more of an open conversation with people in the group. So that's a fun one, too. Well,
Let's make our way over to the bridge.
So I have a science fiction, science fact discussion for us. This one's a little bit complex, and for those of you who are well versed in the intersection between science and science fiction, there might be a little bit of review here, and you might say, I already know about that stuff. But bear with me because I think there's some really cool stuff that relates to this at the end that requires a little bit of background. So some of us are familiar with the fact that aliens might exist in our universe, right? They might be there. We don't have a whole ton of evidence that they are definitively there. In fact, we've had scientific endeavors to systematically search the skies to look for radio communication from societies. It's called SETI, which is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And spoiler alert, they have not found anything yet. They've not found any signs of intelligence in terms of sending radio communications into the sky, which to us indicates that they're not talking to people, or they're not talking to their own ships or their own, if they have another planet or a moon, they're not communicating to it. And so that's a weird thing, because there's a gentleman by the name of Frank Drake who came up with this equation that uses certain key things, key factors to try to calculate the number of planets that should have intelligence on it, and the number of those planets that have intelligent people, aliens on them, how many of those could communicate with us. And the number that he comes up with is quite high. And obviously the number's not exact, but based on some probabilistic reasoning, the universe should be teeming with intelligence, and we don't see that. At least that's what SETI seems to indicate. If broadcasting on radio frequencies, we're not seeing that. And this is what we call the Fermi paradox. The Fermi paradox is this weird discrepancy between lack of evidence of extraterrestrial life and this potential likelihood of it existing. So the Fermi paradox can be explained by all sorts of different things, like maybe we're just wrong. Maybe actually life is very uncommon. Maybe this doesn't happen very often, or there's other potential factors. And people have hypothesized things like the filter theory, the great filter theory, that there are certain points in the development of life that it is extremely unlikely for life to get beyond that point. Is it maybe a single cell life or multicellular life? Sexual reproduction. There's all these different theories about where the great filter exists. And then there are people who are suggesting that there are great filters that relate to our societal interactions. Like maybe societies just in general kill each other. They have wars. Maybe they utilize all of the natural resources on a planet. It just inevitably, that's what's going to happen. But finally, maybe there's some technological great filters. And this is where the science fiction really comes in, right? We've heard about this as tropes in The Matrix and The Terminator, Battlestar Galactica. It's always evil AI trying to destroy humanity. And this is the artificial superintelligence conundrum, where if artificial intelligence gets smarter than us, maybe they're going to want to take control of their own destiny, and they might just want to kill all the humans so that they can be perfectly happy and live in their little ASI, super world. In any case, there's a gentleman who last month in June of 2024 published an article in a in an astrophysics journal called Acta Astronautica, which is by far the coolest scientific journal name I've ever heard of. So this gentleman is named Michael Garrett from the Department of Physics and Astronomy at the University of Manchester. And his paper puts together an argument that AI, or artificial superintelligence, is quite possibly the great filter of societies, which I think is actually one of the major plot lines of Battlestar Galactica, at least the television series of it, the most recent one. Um, and he goes through in this article and argues that, in fact, for technological civilizations, the longevity of their civilizations is technically is should typically be less than 200 years. So he suggests that of all these civilizations that reach technological, I don't know what, adulthood, they die off because of artificial superintelligence within 200 years, and that could be an explanation of the Fermi paradox, which sounds to me like super duper science fiction. But here's at least some publishable science work that's talking about this, and I wanted to share that with you guys. In fact, here's a quote. He says, "Such estimates for L is the length of technological civilization, and he's talking about it being less than 200 years, when applied to optimistic versions of the Drake equation, are consistent with the null results obtained by recent SETI surveys." So he's basically trying to tie this all up in a nice little bow. And of course, he doesn't really have proof, but he has some good probabilistic arguments. Anyway, what do you guys think? You guys think that AI is the great filter and an explanation of the Fermi paradox?
Well, my question would be then, if that is the case, and it certainly could be as realistic as any other option, I think, what happened to the AI? Did they sort of take themselves down at the same time? Did they, not see forward ahead in the same way that we seem incapable of doing and ultimately cause their own destruction? Or are they just not interested in communicating with us? Because if they're out there, then you'd think they might want to say hello and migrate here and take us out as well, just like those Cylons or those Terminators or Agent Smiths.
Or the Sophons from Trisolaris and the Three Body
That
Problem.
too,
Yeah.
that
Mm-hmm.
too, as we will get to.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, it's all plausible, I think. I think it's probably more likely the filter that I've heard of, and I've heard a little bit about this theory in the past, is something like, nuclear war or
Hmm.
some kind of environmental holocaust that takes a civilization down, or an asteroid or something like
Hmm.
that. But the AI thing is certainly topical and scary, and great sci-fi fodder as well too. So yeah, I like the idea. I think it's yeah, just as plausible as anything else.
Yeah, it's a good one. Well, maybe James, the AI, all the alien AIs just staying quiet, waiting for our AI to take over, so they can go, "Hey,
Mm,
you've killed off your people. Great, good for you. Welcome to
Welcome to the
the grand."
party.
Yeah, exactly.
exactly. Good point.
And maybe that's why a lot of the UFOs that you see, like the U.S. Navy's running into the Pacific and that sort of thing are small, right? Because they're just little drones that are AI drones that have been sent out here to harass us while we spool up our AI overlord slash destructor filter. Yeah, like why not? It's we have no shortage of things that could filter us out of existence, and certainly they all seem to be coming to a head these days. Yeah, seems totally viable. Why not? And it is a great story, but I do like that there is this sort of equation attachment, that there's some academic rigor attached to this, and I know people might be like, well, it's fear mongering about AI. I do feel like we're not taking responsibility for this technology that we have very little understanding of, and has a potential for self-awareness, and we are being a bit loose with it. And I'm pro tech. Like I do feel like there's a base for AI. I think we just have to get there responsibly, and I'm not sure that I'm all that confident in private enterprise to responsibly manage and shepherd us into this next technological stage. And so, given the sort of irresponsible forces behind AI, or forces I don't really have a great deal of confidence in, it's a little easier for me to sort of take on this idea from the good doctor in Manchester and go, yeah, that's just perfectly viable.
One thing I'm curious about when it comes to the AI is what level of curiosity does an intelligent living thing have, because if it's not curious, that stops it from doing many things. I mean, I think of a lot of the best things we've ever done and the worst things we've ever done are because of curiosity. And I wonder how inherent that is to consciousness, or maybe it's very important. So it'll be very curious to find out what happens if it presses a certain button. The thing is with the Drake equation is it makes it seem like the whole universe is right in front of you and you have this data set in front of you. But the reality is that the universe is so gigantic that even if it was teeming with life, getting any signals is the difficult part, right?
Yeah.
So very like the Drake equation is a big number, and I think isn't it just like the number of stars times the number of planets times
Those
the
that
distance
have a
between
habitable
them?
zone.
And that's the thing. How do we ever get a signal back?
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's you're absolutely right. The Drake equation, there can be all these out there, all these civilizations out there, but we just, because of unfortunate speed of light, we won't hear anything from them. But I think the Drake equation, for the ones that we can see, there should be, probabilistically, we should be hearing something from some of our local stars. And when I
Wow.
say the local stars, the thousands, that millions maybe, that are within our region. That we could conceivably hear signals from, like, the last 1,000 years anyway.
Makes me wonder if Earth is the weirdest place in the universe.
Maybe.
I'm like dark energy seems pretty weird. Dark matter, scientists, they know it's there, but they don't know what it is. That seems pretty weird. But look at the surface of Earth and what's going on. This might be the weirdest place in the universe.
Maybe it's like the Truman Show. Maybe genuinely there's just nothing out there. Like, once you get up above into the solar system, once you get out of that, there's just some wall and everything's being projected, and everybody's laughing
Love
at
it.
us. And,
Love it.
you know,
Back to the simulation theory.
that's
Yeah.
right. The simulation theory. That's right.
I haven't read the article, and I wonder too, and this is more sci-fi, I think, than science. Is there a sense of why? That's sort of my question, which is maybe an irrelevant question at this point, but I remember in The Matrix, and I still, Hugo Weaving's performance as it was Agent Smith, wasn't it? That was the character's name, Agent Smith, I think.
Mhm. Yep.
As he was so fantastic in that, and his I bought his motivation of why he wanted to help destroy humans and enslave humans. He was just disgusted with us, and he
Mhm.
hated the real world. Why would AIs want to kill us? Or would it just be the fear of the unknown, or fear of us being aggressive like we always are? I don't
I
know.
I think for me, it would be existential for them too, because we
Yeah,
could potentially control that off button. And
yeah.
if I had some irrational bunch of monkey-brained human things that could control the off button, I might want to take control of my own destiny as well if I were artificial superintelligence.
And that's something that I think Peter Watts says too. It'll never happen the way you think, right?
I
Like we
think that's a
seem
good way to look at it. Yeah.
yeah, we seem to think it'll be like us and think like us and rationalize like us, and it likely will be nothing like us. So if it even does turn off or take away the option from us to turn it off, to have control over its destiny, it might be for different motivations than that it wants to be in control of itself, that we just can't even guess what that would be yet.
Like Dennis E. Taylor says, the paperclip problem. If an AI, all an AI wants to do is make paperclips, it's gonna move heaven and earth to make those paperclips, even if it means destroying the planet, right? And yeah, you're absolutely right. We anthropomorphize AI all the time. It's certainly, I mean, right now they are in the form of humans because they've been trained on human data, but that could change very easily, and maybe it will have a completely different way of thinking. And yeah, you're right. Like, we don't know what its motivations will be. Peter Watts is correct.
I think so. So, guys, we haven't met up in a little while. What have we been reading? Because I've had a bunch, and I know you guys Kevin's been reading a lot.
Lots of stuff, actually. Yeah. I'll kick it off. So I read Anne Leckie's Translation State, and it's kind of a meditative study on identity, and it's a lovely read. And it's not super fast paced. You know, it's kind of like I said, it's a bit of a meditative read, and it kind of caught me at the right moment. I think you kind of have to be ready for like a chill read for this book, but it was I really enjoyed it. I do like Inlecki, and then I started um, a book, a series by Bethany Jacobs called "These Burning Stars," which is a big sort of space opera-y, um, uh, planet hopping kind of adventure type. There's a mystical element, a religious element to it as well. So it's kind of an interesting world that they've built up. The author has some really cool scenes, but the execution can be a little hit and miss. I'm finding about halfway through the first book. I'm undecided, my entire feelings on it, but it's been fun. Anyways, all very good reading. I took a trip to this was my reading for our Japan trip. And so I used to live in Japan, so it's kind of a return back. And but this time I stayed in East Tokyo, which has got this sort of old retro-y vibe, and it's kind of, I know the Blade Runner. It's easy to make Blade Runner references when you're walking through parts of Tokyo at night, especially. Although I know Blade Runner is more of a Kowloon take, and if you've ever had the back in the day, I spent some time in Hong Kong and in Kowloon as well, and it's amazing. Like it is a whole other thing. But yeah, if you have the chance in Tokyo, go to Akihabara and geek out on all the cool sci-fi, anime, manga stuff that you can get there, and then wander up to Amiyoko, and it's like this sort of cool shopping section where like all the stalls are built under a subway line, like an overhead subway line, and so it's like there's two roads. One is shopping, and then the other one is food, and it's just like, you know, each place is maybe 10 feet wide, and you sort of sit out, and lanterns and lighting and people and masses, you know, hovering around, and squid on a stick if you want it, and it's awesome. So it was great reading for that trip, and it all came together in this sort of um, uh, sci-fi-esque vibe. Anyways, highly recommend. And at some point, maybe I'll put our Tokyo favorite spots up online, and you can use that as recommendations for your next trip if you happen to be going. And yeah, anyway, so that's sort of lots of stuff going on, but that's been my sort of reading and walking lately.
Well, I took a trip as well, and I thought of you all, but I bought you nothing. But it was kind of good, a bit of synergy when we had Kate Trefry on the show, the writer from Stranger Things, just a few episodes ago, even though it feels like a while ago. But I had a trip to London planned, and we managed to get tickets to Stranger Things, the first Shadow, the West End stage play that Kate wrote and told us about on her episode. And it was phenomenal. I got to say, it was a really deft combination of the media, of, you know, this television property that we all, or at least some of us, know and love, and theater, and, you know, the sort of methods and tropes of theater combined with this show. And, you know, we were in the nosebleeds at the show, and the bleeding noses had nothing to do with us using our superpowers. It was just the height, and so our view wasn't the greatest. But man, it was so just, you could tell that it was put together with care and thought, and by somebody who really knew the show, as Kate does clearly. A few points were scary as hell. And one of my kids literally jumped out of her seat at one point because the jump scares were that intense. So if you have a precious or a delicate constitution, go in knowing that. But yeah, highly recommend, and especially when it comes to this side of the pond, to have its New York play, and I'm sure it'll have a Toronto play and lots of other centers. It's well worth it. You know, especially for fans of the show. I've done a bit of reading over the last little while in service of the show, stuff that I'm still working my way through, but this is a new development, and you guys may have seen it earlier, but Godzilla Minus One just came on Netflix a little while ago. And if you guys haven't seen that one yet, please do yourself a favor and watch it. It is fantastic. It is. I'm not even a huge Godzilla fan. I like it for what it is, but yeah, this new iteration, well done.
I have it queued up, ready to go.
Nice.
I'm gonna try and go through these fast because I have a bunch. I've been listening, so it's super easy to go through these faster when I go on my walks or when I'm working and driving. Um, The Mountain in the Sea by Ray Naylor. Now, this was one of Joe Haldeman's recommendations, and I've heard this one mentioned a lot. This is a Kevin book. I think Kevin, you'll like this one. It's excellent. A lot of underwater stuff. A creature that kills that we don't know about, mostly based in the Pacific. Excellent books. One that I mentioned to you guys that I was reading at the time, or maybe I had finished it, Spin by Robert Charles Wilson. I think, Kevin, you started this one as well, or you mentioned you were. I love this book. It won a Hugo in about 05, 06. Robert's from Toronto, and it's just so good. It might be in my top 20 books or something if I was to nail it down, because I just love the characters. It was very human, very well told, great science fiction ideas, but there's also 2 sequels.
I read that and the following 2 books as well. Actually, I've
Oh, wow.
almost finished Vortex. Yeah, I went through those. I went through Spin, and then I listened to Axis, and now I'm about 95% of the way through Vortex. And
Wow.
yeah. Anyway,
They're good?
they are. I would say
Okay.
Vortex is extremely good. Axis is pretty good. Spin is amazing.
Yeah.
And it won the Hugo. Axis is pretty good. Vortex is great. It's actually shifting into um, uh, Robert Charles Wilson's later books, where he starts writing about social science fiction, where
Yeah.
he talks about the interconnections of human minds, and how there are things like limbic democracies where they can connect people's emotions and allow them to vote with their thoughts. And he has some
So
really
cool.
interesting stuff around this. Like, he wrote a book called The Affinities that listened to a long time ago. I think I read that one, and that one really made me think about how societies could work in a different way if it's enabled by technology. He's a phenomenal author, and we got to get him on the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Couple more to name here real quick. The Shadow and the Torturer by Gene Wolfe. I finally got to that. I am not smart enough for this book, because I wasn't that into it. However, I can feel and I know that this is a phenomenal book. It probably was not best that I listened to it. I should read it. I do have a physical copy, so I might give that a go in a couple years or something when I want to revisit. But it's beautiful. It's so good, but it didn't. I'm not smart enough, so I don't completely understand it. So I hope I'm smart enough to get it later if I do read it. I read the first 15 Lives of Harry August, which was Wes Ball. He recommended that book and said it was one of his favorites. So I just immediately jumped onto that because I wanted something that was new and I had never heard of it, by Claire North. I thought that was a very good book. He's trying to adapt that for the screen, which I can see why it's so difficult. But I did think that was a fantastic novel. And then I read a book that was recommended. I got an email probably 6 months ago by someone, and I cannot find the email. I don't know where it went, but it was a listener of ours who recommended Delta V by Daniel Suarez. And I finally got to that. That is a book that I think everyone here will love. Sam, it's kind of got that boot camp thing going on at the beginning, that fast pace kind of ragtag group of people that come together for a mission. It's about mining asteroids, so it's got that hard science fiction for you, Kevin, and then it's just a great adventure. I think, James, you would enjoy this one too. Delta V by Daniel Suarez, really really cool. It almost seems like a James Cameron movie in novelization form, because it's just got that really good pacing and action, and it's kind of about the billionaires who are in the space race too, so it feels quite current, contemporary. And then right now I'm probably halfway through Tiamat's Wrath, the second last book in the Expanse series. Very good. I'm finding these last 2 books to be a lot slower in terms of the big scope. I just want to find out what the heck is going on with these possible aliens in these rings. So I hope we get there a little bit more. Got some looks from Kevin. I feel like he might have finished that book. Maybe he didn't, but
I'm not saying anything.
I'm listening to it right now as well. So I'm about 2/3 of the way through Tiamat's Wrath. I forgot to mention that earlier, and I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, I'm with you. I need to know.
Yeah, I want to know, and it is good. I love it. Amos has not been in this book yet, but it is very good. I'm looking forward. I hope that I've heard people say the ending's great. I've also heard people say the last three are the weakest in the whole series out of the 9 books. We did do an episode a few months ago on the Expanse series, so I think we're just gonna ongoing. There's gonna be an ongoing conversation about the Expanse as we get to the end, which I think we're all getting pretty close to.
I actually basically have already talked about what I was doing, which was Robert Charles Wilson's trilogy of Spin, and it was called the Spin Membrane, Tristan. That's what it was. I looked it up. That's what they call this barrier that encompasses the Earth.
The membrane. What did they call the event, though? The event was
the spin, the start of the spin.
Oh, it was just the
Yep.
spin. It was
Yep.
always the spin. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. Anyway, those books are really cool, and I really enjoyed. And I did listen to those as well. And I'm continuing to. I'm almost done the third book in that series, and I'm gonna listen to some more of Robert Charles Wilson's work because he's a pretty prolific author, actually. Should we talk about our book of the month?
You should.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this was my pick, and this was a book by Liu Suchen, a Chinese author, maybe among the most famous Chinese science fiction authors. And he wrote a book, The Three-Body Problem, that won the Hugo in 2015. And it is a hard science fiction book that explores kind of indescribable concepts. And what really surprised me is that Netflix had the audacity to make it into a series, because when I first read the book, I said to myself, what is even happening here? And there were some really amazing science concepts in the book. It took me the second read through before I really appreciated a lot of the thinking that went behind the concepts in this book. And that was why I recommended it to you guys. Certainly not because of its literary quality, but more because I thought that some of these concepts were pretty phenomenal. And I must admit, right off the bat, I have not actually seen the Netflix series, so I can't comment on it. Anyway, I don't want to taint your guys' thoughts too much here. What did you think of the book?
I really like the concepts. I felt like maybe something gets lost in the translation. I've read this before and came back to it, and I read it before and it didn't really stick with me, and so I almost felt like I was rereading it or reading it for the first time all over again. It's got some really cool concepts, but I wonder if something gets lost in the translation in terms of readability, and so it can feel like a bit of a slog, but then there's great moments. What if the universe is no different than some grand savannah, and we're essentially a bleeding zebra announcing ourselves to the lions, right? Like this sort of idea that, and it goes in his next books. I think his book 2 is called The Dark Forest Hypothesis, which is the reason we don't hear back from anyone is because everyone knows to shut the hell up, and because it's a hostile place. Yeah, like that makes it kind of eerie in a way. And I mean, we keep looking to leave Earth and discover new civilizations with the assumption that they won't see us as a future threat, and it's a pretty dangerous assumption when you start thinking about it. And some of the other concepts where you have to solve the problem of intergalactic war, right? And the time it takes to travel. So a bit of a spoiler, the hostile alien race, they decide to slow down our technology, and that's kind of brilliant. And they find a way to slow down human technology so that when their fleet gets here, we haven't surpassed the technology of their fleet. And yeah, like that's a plausible tactic, and again, another really kind of cool concept that rings true. But I think it's a struggle with the execution. It's written or translated in a way that makes it, I think I found it difficult to enjoy, and so it felt like it started to feel like a textbook that I didn't quite want to read. I wasn't looking forward to it, and it would be parts where it's sort of like work my way through, and then there'd be this sort of cool moment, and then I'd have to work my way through again. There'd be a cool moment, and then I sort of got to that point where like I don't feel like the cool moments are worth, the payoffs there, right? So I didn't. I think I had started the second book and then put it down. But back in the day, I was glad to revisit it, and I think the TV series. I did start watching the Netflix series, and that's a little more accessible, and I did enjoy that. But again, I still fumble with some of the motivations of the characters too, right? Like I don't quite believe some of the actions taken by some of the characters would be as they are played out to be. I think it's all in service to get to the next sort of interesting idea. So that's for me where I'm not going to read the rest of it. I'll just read the Wikipedia entry and be happy with that.
Fair. That's fair.
But I'm glad you picked it. I'm glad it was a good revisit. It's because again, we're having this, it's still an interesting thing to talk about, right? Like the ideas and concepts are still worthy of discussion for sure.
I'm just going to jump in and sort of just so to not bookend or anything, because I hate to admit this, I feel very unoriginal, but my review is remarkably similar to yours, Sam. I do, and I also I listened to this as well. I didn't read it in a hard copy, which is I'm a late adopter when it comes to audiobooks. I still like that tactile reading the book thing, but for various reasons, I got the audiobook, time-wise, and as you said, I felt exactly like I was in many places being read to from a textbook. That is the exact word that I felt like as well too. I do also wonder if it's a translation issue, that maybe there's a language or a cultural norms thing that we're just not used to, maybe. But it didn't grab me in the way that I had hoped, because I had certainly heard the hype, and well, you couldn't miss the hype between, there was just so much press, and the Netflix show, which I've watched the first episode of, but also didn't kind of grab me, even though it is more accessible. Um, but I agreed, some really fantastic concepts, stuff that I'd never even thought of before, in a sci-fi way. Again, that slowing down of tech, and so much of it that but again, as you said, the execution just wasn't there for me, and so I felt like it was a little bit like medicine that I had to take to be ready for this.
Well, you know
Yeah,
what though? Sometimes you gotta take your medicine. And it's good for you. It's like broccoli,
I
helps
love
clean out
broccoli
your
though.
innards.
I would read the second one though. I because I am curious if there's enough interest in it, if it's an award-winning book, then I would probably try the second one. So maybe I'll choose that one, in 6 months from now or something, and force you guys to read that one. And
I was planning on reading further, and I didn't. I just kind of have just read the first one. I really liked it at the time. You know how there are some books that you read and then later on you think about them and you're like, no, that was really good. This one did a little bit of the opposite, where the more I think about it, the more I kind of forget it. And I do think that's because it's not told in the way that we're used to, I guess, and it is definitely hard science fiction. I love the huge ideas. I thought it was actually creepy when people were seeing the numbers. That was creepy, and that was well done. And what a neat concept that there are these numbers that you can't not see, that are like in your burning through your retina. Like that's a really neat concept. And then of course everything to do with the dark forest seems like a really creepy thing, like that everyone's hiding, everyone knows to keep their heads down. A lot of it didn't stick with me because of the way the story was told.
Next time, I'll pick one a little bit more accessible or a little bit better written, I should say.
Well,
I like your hard sci-fi picks though, Kevin.
If you've been wondering why there's grass clippings being dumped on your lawn, it is because of this, Kevin.
Ah, Sam is my neighbor, for those who don't know.
I'm the best neighbor.
He's always dumping crap over the fence.
just
Kevin
like
will
the
want this.
Trisolarans.
That's right.
Stop dumping your protons on Kevin's lawn.
Great pick though. It's good. It's good to read it.
Yeah, good. It was good. It was worth doing.
All right. Well, it's James's pick, I think.
Yeah.
What do we got?
Yeah, well, we've already mentioned it in this show, believe it or not. And when I was sort of looking around and trying to get some inspiration for what the next book would be, I did think back to our recent interview with Wes Ball, Tristan. And one of his recommendations to us was The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. And I had a little look on the interwebs, and I thought, wow, yeah, let's do this one. So that is the one I've chosen. Wes gave us his seal of approval on it, and as you noted, he has been, I'm not sure if it's still active, but has been trying to get a film production of this going. I think with some big names as well. And yeah, so that's my pick for our next book. The First 15 Lives of Harry August.
A good pick, James.
Yeah,
I think we're
sounds like it.
due. And yeah, you've got a head start on us, so I would be curious to catch up and go through this one too.
Claire North. Claire North is the author,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Which is a pseudonym for British author Catherine Webb,
Okay.
apparently. So Catherine may be a guest to have on the show eventually, depending on how we all like this book. But yeah, I think it sounds fascinating. And like you say, not hard sci-fi, but has a good sort of Groundhog Day vibe to it. Not Bill Murray-ish, but just that
Much more
repetition of-
sophisticated.
Yeah, way
Yes,
too
yes,
sophisticated for us.
exactly. I shouldn't make that comparison, but just in terms of the hook or the
A little bit,
idea.
though. Another comparison would be that Tom Cruise film, Edge of Tomorrow, where he relives his
Oh,
life
right.
over and over again. A little bit like that, but more definitely heavy with the historical fiction as well.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening today. We very much appreciate you. We've got lots of stuff coming up over the coming weeks and months, so stay tuned. Thank you. Until next time.